When I was training 4 to 5 times a week and eating pretty clean, I still felt awful. I had brain fog and I generally just didn't know what it was that was going wrong. And I want to talk to you more about this because when I started training, which was about lockdown time, I was in a bulking phase, right? And I wasn't eating necessarily that processed food. I was focusing on, eating things like chicken. I'd occasionally have eggs, but nothing crazy. But I often woke up and just felt like I had so much brain fog that I just couldn't focus. I always felt tired all the time. Before even the afternoon, I would genuinely just feel quite tired, and I found it very difficult to focus on things. And when it came to my physique, yeah, sure, maybe I got a bit stronger because I was bulking, but I just wasn't happy with the way I looked. Now, I realize now what the issue was. And the issue being is the carbs that I was eating, right? The carbohydrates that I was having on a regular basis. Now, this really was pretty much pasta, rice, and sometimes maybe bread. And it was the mix of these three things which caused a lot of issues for me. And I'm not saying that these foods are bad and you shouldn't have them, but what I'm just saying is when I was in that bulking phase, when I was sort of eating, when I was having these foods, it really caused a lot of issues for me, right? It just made, brain fog a lot more difficult and it made things a lot more difficult to focus on. Now, this was also in the period when I was starting to get into entrepreneurship, where I was starting to learn more about business and trying to develop skills. And I can't tell you how difficult it was to try and do that when I was eating quite a lot of carbs. Now, one of the big changes I made and transitions that I made was going to a more animal based diet. Now, someone I do sort of follow and got this concept from is Paul Saladino. And effectively, what he talks about is having low carbs. And if you are having carbs, you want to make sure that that is sort of fruits and just effectively as organic as possible. So for me at the moment, I have fruits as carbs, I might have raw honey. And generally speaking, that's pretty much about it. And what the focus then for the diet is then focusing on having, high protein and a high fat as well. So animal based, typically speaking, I'm having steak, I'm having eggs every day. I'm having maybe some mince, some avocado, I'm having cheese, maybe some milk and that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, it's very, very clean, but it's low carb. And this has had a huge shift. And I've been doing this sort of eating pattern for probably about maybe 1.5 years, maybe about 2 years now. And it's been really, really quite good. And as you can obviously see, probably from the thumbnail and from the images, it's really also helped me sort of lean down as well, but also keep a lot of muscle. And that's been really, really key for me. But most importantly, I have so much more mental clarity. And that's what's really key for me because I didn't quite realize at the time that what I had was brain fog. It just felt like I was just tired and that was, or, that I'd slept funny, right? A lot of the time I just associate, oh, I'm just tired because I didn't sleep well. But actually, I now realize that foods play so much of a bigger part. So if you're someone that is trying to get in better shape, if you're someone that perhaps is, feeling often more tired than maybe you feel like you should, really take a look at the stuff you're eating. Right now, sure, if it's things that are, like if it's processed foods, if it's seed oils, if it's those sort of things, those are more obvious. But I'd really take a look at the carbohydrates you're eating, the amount, and when you're eating them. Typically speaking, when I'm having a few more carbohydrates, I'll aim to have them later in the day, usually more towards the evening, so it's out of the way at work. But in terms of the stuff you're eating, really take a look at that because if you're, for example, having, I don't know, things like pasta, rice, bread, grains, whatever it might be, I would at least maybe even consider testing, perhaps taking them out for like 7 days and just see how you feel. Because lowering the carbohydrates in my diet and making sure that my protein fats is high enough so I'm not feeling like I'm starving, that made a really big impact. And it had a knock on effect, like I said, to both my physique, but also to my energy and my clarity, which has really helped me more better turn up every single day the way I want to. So really dial in if actually you're feeling that you're struggling with your energy, perhaps you're feeling brain fog, give this a go. Actually consider lowering the carbs or taking out carbs or replacing it with maybe perhaps more natural sources like sort of fruit and such and see how things go. But that being said, hopefully you found this useful. And if any of that resonated or you have any questions, do let me know. But that said, I'll catch you soon.